The Rocket Review is sponsored by Why Not Saloon.
I'm so pleased to have back on the show incredible Americana country music singer-songwriter. You know him from his hits, and he's got a brand new album out now, George Ducas. George, thanks for coming back in.
Eric, it's great to be back, man.
You know, usually I bump into you around town, but it's nice to have you in studio, actually.
You don't like bumping into me like in the grocery store?
Your Ace Hardware.
Ace Hardware.
Home Depot, our usual places here in Nashville.
That's
Man,
right.
I got to tell you, wow. I mean, Long Way From Home, you know, just released in June, and it's already, I mean, you were just in Rolling Stone UK.
Yeah.
And you've been in Country Music People, all this. I mean, you're like everywhere right now with this new album.
I mean, we're working hard. We worked hard on the album, worked with Pete Anderson on the record, and Pete's like,
yeah,
he's like a chapter in American music history all of himself. You know, like I went out to Los Angeles to record it, really deliberately wanted to, you know, work somewhere that was not Nashville.
Right.
I just felt like, it would do me good, and I loved having met Pete. He's worked with everybody from like Americana country queen Lucinda Williams,
right,
to of course the Dwight Yoakam
Certainly.
records, to Jackson Brown.
Yeah.
The list is endless. Buck Owens, he's worked with Roy Orbison. Pete's just great. We hit it off, and I love the record that we created. So then the hard work becomes getting the story out. So
right.
yeah, we've had a lot of really great coverage on the record. And
well, you know, and it's not bad when you have a Grammy Award-winning guitarist and producer involved in this, like Pete Anderson. You know, especially with this new book out and all that kind of good stuff. But you know, it was interesting to me listening to these songs too, George, to where, you know, certainly, you know, your past albums sound great. You know, you've always had incredible songwriting, but it seems like this album really showcases your vocals. And I kind of like the direction of the guitar also. And one of the articles mentioned, you know, that it's like Merle Haggard meets the Eagles and then plays, you know, a show.
Yeah, that's actually, that was my quote for like how I felt about the record, because first of all, we recorded in Los Angeles, which was new and different for me. Working with Pete is a process all on its own.
Right.
And it was amazing, because it's like, you don't, in Nashville, you work for like 3 hours and try to figure out how many songs you can cram into a 3-hour recording session. Out there, we're working in Pete's backyard studio, and it's like we work until it's right.
Right.
You know, and that goes for Pete's parts too, his guitar parts. So, like, there's no timeline. You just work until the music's right, and
Yeah.
I love that, and I love the way that Pete cares so much about that. Like, even his own, I mean, he's his own worst critic. Like, he'll call me, if I'm not in studio, he'll call me at 11 o'clock at night, be like, hey, George, which one do you like better? You like this better? And it's like over the phone, you know, it's like,
Right.
or you like this better? It's like, they're both great, man, whatever you want.
But you know, I think what I liked about it though, George, to where it didn't sound like a stretch. I mean, you know, like we were talking before we came in studio, this album to me kind of sets you into more of the Americana space. And certainly you've had, you know, radio hits on country music and everything, but the songs on here, I mean, I can hear the flavors of Buck Owens, I can hear Marty Robbins, I can hear the Eagles, so many of your influences
You're
over the
spot
years.
on, yeah.
You know, and I mean, but it's so new and fresh the way you approached them.
Thanks.
with your voice, with the lyrics, and with Pete's guitar and the rest of the band.
Yeah, and we used a lot of Pete's favorite people out there in Los Angeles. Fiddle player actually was in Canada. We never even saw him. We just, you know, so yeah, he just he did all his work from there. But it's fresh too, because the songs are fresh. I mean, I wrote them all. With the exception of one song, wrote the whole album, and the one song was a suggestion of Pete's.
Yeah.
But we just took our time with it. I took my time writing it.
How many songs did you come to the table with for this album?
Well, I mean, we started doing pre-production or trading songs back and forth remotely during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
That's when we first met, Pete and I. And so it became Zoom calls of me in my man cave and him in his studio in Los Angeles. And
4 years in the making.
yeah, we would just be, well, I mean, not nonstop,
Yeah.
but that's when it started. It's like, send me, Dropbox me some stuff. And then we'd hop on the phone and it's like, play me that song. And, you know,
Right.
so, and a lot of it was just shooting the, you know.
Yeah,
so
that.
so like we were just hanging out, talking sports, talking tacos. Like it didn't matter.
Yeah, but I mean, but don't you think also though, George, that kind of builds the camaraderie?
Oh, yeah,
I mean, when
no
you hear
doubt.
the song, The Guitar Man, you know, once again, the guitar licks are incredible. Drifter off the album, I think,
One of
is
my
an
favorites, yeah.
incredible crossover song that could play multi-platform.
Yeah.
You know, and so you've got a number of songs like that on there, but then also, you know, some of it has like that 90s country vibe that is so huge right now.
Yeah, you know, 90s country's had a real resurgence, which is interesting. I mean, obviously that's kind of when I sort of moved to town as I was still practically almost a teenager. Like it was crazy. Like, but stuff was happening so fast. Like before I knew it, I had written a hit song and gotten signed to a publishing deal and got signed to a record deal. And and I'm grateful for it. And now I realize how fast it all went. But back then it was like it couldn't happen fast enough, you know. So it's just funny how that, you know.
Well, and you've got such an interesting story too, George. And once again, you know, being a fan, you know, of your music and keeping up with you on all your tours all over the country, especially in Texas, which you're so huge. But I mean, born in Galveston, Texas, ended up moving with the family to California. You know, you started songwriting very early, which I thought it was interesting that at a teenage years, your first song was Whiskey and Women.
Yeah, Women and Whiskey.
Women and Whiskey, thank you. It's
that's
like
okay.
It's like going.
It doesn't matter which way it comes.
I thought for an 11 or 12-year-old, that's a reach, man.
I was just trying to I was listening to like what my parents had in the house, what records they had around the house. So back then it was still vinyl, and now we're going back to vinyl.
Thank goodness.
But and I'm actually going to have this new record in vinyl. That'll be my first time to have something like that. So, but at the time I was just growing up with Willie Nelson records that were around the house, and so I just listened to what Willie wrote about. Like it was whatever Willie wrote about. I figured, you know, that sounds pretty credible to me. So,
and I think it's interesting too that Willie was such a huge influence on you, because I can even, you know, listening to this album, and certainly there's no copying or anything on any of these songs, although I think a number of them sound like hits to me. But it's like, but I can kind of hear Willie's influence in a few of them also.
I know. It's like now, I think it comes out without me really thinking about it. But when I was a kid, just sort of learning how to play, learning songs, learning how to sing or whatever. I didn't even really formally learn how to sing, which I probably should have. But like, you know, it was like my parents asking me to come into the living room and do my Willie Nelson impression, you know. So I mean, so you know, kids are sponges,
right?
And so I would like literally pour on the Willie Nelson thing.
How great is that?
Yeah. So now I think it's just become sort of a tool in my toolkit.
Right.
You know?
Well, and speaking of which, you know, I thought it was so interesting, you know, knowing your history too, George, to where a lot of people, you know, just see you as, you know, the star you are now, you know, with the new album out, with the country music and Americana and everything. But you know that, you know, you hit Atlanta and you were working a 9-to-5 job and just playing on weekends, you know, and then finally, you know, Jimmy kind of discovered you.
Yeah.
And
Jimmy Bowen.
And so, you know, Jimmy Bowen discovers you, but also you're like going, maybe I need to make this leap to Nashville and give up this 9-to-5 down in Atlanta.
Oh, I was already giving it up. I was so unhappy working a 9-to-5. Yeah. For all of those you out there who, you know, are hating going to work every day, figure out what you really love to do, and then try to figure out if you can, you know, if you can monetize that. And there's ways. It may not be the original way you know, sort of think it's going to happen.
Right.
But if you really want to figure it out, you probably will.
And Jimmy signed you.
Yeah. No, Jimmy Bowen signed me in a pool hall. Played there every Friday night.
What a great story.
They served beer by the quart. Like literally, I mean, you could smoke back in the day when you could actually smoke in a pool hall.
Right.
So yeah, it was pretty special. It was pretty crazy.
Well, you know, and it's interesting to me too, to where, you know, besides, you know, your own wealth of songs and the hits that you've had on the radio and everywhere too, George, but also other artists like the Chicks, you know, George Jones, Garth Brooks, Trisha Yearwood have recorded your songs, and the Chicks song did really well for you. Yeah,
I mean, I was on the Dixie Chicks record that went like to Mars and back or something. Like there was like 15 million in record sales. I don't know what it's up to now.
And I didn't even know you wrote that song until it's like, oh my gosh.
The song's called "Never Say Die," and it wasn't a single or anything, but it's on a record that went platinum like 15 or 20 times. It's crazy.
Come on, and that's you.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anymore.
I mean, but
it's not me. It's like
that's your song.
It is my song, but it's not. It's
so
like,
now you just go out to the mailbox and go, well, I hope that chick's check gets here.
That's the hope. That's the hope. That's the hope. But these things, there aren't any record sales anymore, so that's part of the. But now we're getting into all kinds of music.
Yeah, but I mean, but what a
issues,
huge compliment though for them to choose one of your songs.
That's the biggest thing. Anytime another artist records one of your songs, and like Sarah Evans recorded a Real Fine Place to Start that I wrote with Radney, and Garth, George Jones, the song Beer Run.
Great song.
And Eli Young Band, Randy Rogers Band out of Texas, both of those bands. It's a real compliment anytime somebody wants to make one of your creations a part of their career.
Right.
That's like, as a songwriter or a performer, if someone wants to grab one of your songs and make it, part of their show, or record it as part of their project, their album, it's like there really is no higher compliment than that. So,
yeah, I agree.
It's been a blessing. People say blessing so much that it's like an overused term, but it really is. It's really a tip of the cap.
Well, and I think also, George, for
that.
people to know the depth of your songwriting and the craft, because I mean, certainly a lot of people know you, as being, you sell out shows, especially all over Texas. I mean, you are the native son, so when you go there, you're selling out all the shows in Texas, and
I got to pay Eric to be my PR man.
But I'm just saying that it still has to feel good though, songwriting wise.
No, it does.
When other huge artists want to record your songs.
Absolutely. I mean, 1,000%. Or as someone said to me on the phone a couple weeks ago, 1,000,000%, which I love that.
That's great.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
So,
well, I was thinking too, with this new album and everything, I know you'll probably be a part of the Americana Fest, which I think you should be with this new album.
I definitely aim to be.
And then it seems like it's time to be back on the Opry.
Yeah.
And maybe do something with the Ryman and the Opry and all that. It's like
1,000,000%.
See? Don't you think it's time, especially with this album?
I've loved playing the Opry. At times when I've done it, it's been a minute, but would love to be kind of make that a part of record. This album, and, and just to introduce it to the
and maybe Pete could drop in, and you got a little backup guitar with Pete Anderson.
There you go.
I'd like to see that.
We just got to get him a plane ticket.
Yeah, I think that can work. You can do a book signing here, and
you're onto something. That's right. That's right.
So, but I got to bring this up too. Obviously, with all the touring you're doing and this new album growing so well, with the singles out already and now the album out too, you're still endorsed by Elixir and Martin Guitars.
Yes.
I enjoy seeing you playing those D28s out there.
Yeah, great. Well, they're really great people. You still get the feeling when you call them or talk to them on the phone. It's a old school, like just a little mom and pop shop.
So great.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is.
Like Martin Guitars, and they go back to, the beginning of time.
Yeah,
practically
the 1800s Germany, and it's just.
So yeah, and Elixir strings are great on the road too because they're really dependable.
Yeah.
They're practically indestructible.
Well, as much as you tour and gig and play shows, and certainly the shows you've done here in Nashville, and the record signings and everything like that. And I got to bring this up, the incredible Manuel jacket you have on. Does that look awesome?
We're going to go have a tequila with Manuel.
Well, okay, there we go. It's
soon.
You always look at it, and even the photos, for the album cover and the other with the magazines that you've been in a lot lately.
Yeah.
It seems like to me, George, and certainly we've known each other a number of years, it seems like a groundswell right now for you.
It feels like it, and I think the album itself is a really interesting story to tell. Just the way we put it together, working with Pete Anderson, kind of going back to the basics. It's almost in a way, it's a lot like my very first album that was on Capitol with Lipstick Promises and Teardrops, and every song was like
had a few hits,
a country shuffle, practically every song.
Which I'm not against.
No, I'm not against it either. You don't really hear it a lot these days.
Right.
So, but. There does seem to be a bit of a groundswell, and a lot of it too is a really hard-working team behind the scenes. We're all working really hard to get the word out.
I'd also like to bring up incredible lyrics, incredible songs, and you never sound better than on this album.
Thank you, man.
With the backing tracks.
I appreciate it.
I'll tell you what, be sure, however you consume music, the new album out now, Long Way From Home with George Ducas, but go see him live when he comes to your town, and you know, with the festivals and everything else he's going to be out on the road doing. I got the feeling you're going to hear a lot more of this on country music radio, Americana Radio, and if you don't, let them know that you want to hear George's songs, because you're going to love the whole album as much as I do, especially Drifter.
We're definitely, Drifter's kind of one of my favorites too. We're definitely hitting the road strong this summer, and yes, I'd like to second what Eric mentioned. Please come out and see me.
And get a copy on vinyl too, and I heard there's going to be some awesome George Ducas merchandise as well.
It's rolling out.
Oh, there we go. George, thanks for coming on the show.
Let me get you a trucker hat.
Gotta have it.
The Rocket Review is sponsored by Why Not Saloon.